Hello, Internet friend. Today on Value Side, a darkness descends on Washington. I'm David Ravel. Well, the Caesars of ancient Rome used bread and circuses to keep the populace satisfied and peaceful. They would fill their bellies and keep them entertained, and the people would follow anything the Caesars desired. They would march away to distant lands to conquer. They would endure massive corruption that made the ruling class rich, and they would even endure hardships and hunger when the Caesars' economy failed. It's a picture that's not that different from modern-day Rome or the United States of America. After all, we are the wealthiest, most powerful nation on earth, just like Rome of 2 millennia ago. There are even some who claim that the world is at peace because of Pax Americana, an apparent reference to America as the modern world's empire. Which raises the question, are we being kept satisfied with a modern version of bread and circuses? Of the first part of that equation, as long as our stomach is full and our future economic outlook reasonably positive, think retirement account and stock market, the government we elect will continue to have our support. In his colorful way, James Carville put it like this: "It's the economy, stupid," when speaking of Bill Clinton's trek to the presidency. It was as accurate then as it is now. While their way of life is of utmost concern for most Americans, it makes little or no difference to our elites, the Caesars of today, those who actually run the country. While it is said that the average Joe or Jane Q. public is 1 or 2 paychecks away from utter disaster, the oligarchs have amassed the wealth that only a very few in history have ever achieved. Many of our leaders have accumulated wealth equivalent to that of an entire country. Thus want is the least of their worries. For American elites, wealth and influence drive their ambitions, and they are well on their way to achieving a level of control and influence over the U.S. populace that is unparalleled. Utilizing new technologies, these American oligarchs have shaped the nation's goals and objectives, often through controlled conflicts that only a U.S. president can unleash, and all the while ensuring that everyday Americans have the necessities they need to remain satisfied and supporting their objectives. Now, these same technological advances have also provided the military strength on which we rely for battlefield dominance. A review of the past year's military engagements reveal how central these are to our elites. The year began with 2 ongoing conflicts that could only continue with American support. When sworn in on January 20, 2025, there was some question whether the newly elected Donald Trump would continue supporting the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine. He had campaigned on a pledge to end the war in Ukraine in a day and curtail all overseas wars, which presumably included the conflict in Gaza. For one brief moment, peace was in the air, and many looked forward to a time when all these wars would come to an end. Regretfully, this hope faded quickly. In less than 2 weeks as president, Donald Trump initiated his first of what would be 114 bombing raids in Somalia, all of which targeted the Islamic State. A month later, Trump ordered the bombing of Iraq's Anbar province, killing ISIS leader al-Rafi. Just 2 days after the raid in Iraq, the commander-in-chief ordered an attack on the Houthis located in Yemen. For 53 days, the American Air Force bombed this nation with some of the most potent and expensive munitions in the U.S. arsenal. A month and a half later, on June 22, 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer commenced. This long-distance and daring raid, aimed at taking out the nuclear capability of Iran, was over in a night. However, the impact of this raid lingers to this day, with several rumors circulating that the president is poised to do it all over again with another raid aimed at, quote, protecting Iranian demonstrators. On September 2, 2025, President Trump ordered what would ultimately become, quote, the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. This conflict with Venezuela began with the destruction of several small vessels offshore from the South American country. Americans were informed that these vessels were loaded with drugs headed to the U.S. Weeks later, on January 3, 2026, a joint task force of U.S. Marines, Navy, Army, and Air Force captured President Nicolas Maduro on January 3, 2026, in what was labeled a, quote, police action. Now, the final two operations for 2025 were bombing raids, the first on December 19th against ISIS targets across Syria, and the final raid on Christmas Day was aimed at ISIS targets in Nigeria. Historically, Christmas has been a day when fighting would stop, but not for our president. Together, President Trump had ordered 626 airstrikes across the globe, on average more than 1.5 strikes per day all year long. For the record, Donald Trump ordered 71 more airstrikes in just a year than his predecessor, Joe Biden, had in all 4 years of his term. In addition to the international deployments, President Trump also ordered U.S. troops to 4 U.S. cities in September 2025. The 4 cities were Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Memphis, and Portland, Oregon. Clearly, this is a long list of engagements, but what is most remarkable is how these actions fly in the face of both Trump's campaign for the presidency and his campaign for the Nobel Peace Prize. It's hard to see how anyone in their right mind could tell the American public that he is going to be the, quote, peace president, and later tell the Nobel Committee that he deserves the Peace Prize, while at the same time launching this many hostile military strikes. It's in that contradiction that lies the reality of this dark government. For it's no longer the government of the people. Today, it's the government of a small elite with surreptitious objectives hidden from us all. It's become clear that most Americans are either staunchly opposed to these actions or unaware of their ramifications. A YouGov poll taken immediately after the Maduro capture revealed that fewer than 1/3 of the American public supported the action. In contrast, 1/3 had not followed the events and therefore had no opinion, while the final 1/3 actively opposed the actions in Venezuela. In such a divided country, it is easy to ignore public opinion, and for now, that's just what the Trump government is doing, ignoring those who oppose its warlike policies. Today, the United States under the current administration is engaging in foreign military actions at a rate exceeding that of all previous U.S. administrations by 400%. On average, every day, somewhere in the world, the U.S. is bombing an overseas target. Something is dreadfully wrong with this picture. In President Trump's America, receives the quintessential Roman bread and circus candidate, someone who would command a stage of Republican contenders and overwhelm them with his wit and put-downs, and who could tell Hillary Clinton that he'd put her in jail and get away with it. He could even tell America that he was for peace and then wage the most significant number of individual airstrikes that we have ever seen. Yes, there's plenty of circus in this former reality television and worldwide wrestling star, and yet there's plenty of dark also. Something is dreadfully wrong when a country's leader sends his military against not only nations around the world, but his own people. Trump is at war with the whole world, and therein lies the darkness of his government. And that's today's Value Side. For all of our articles and podcasts, visit valueside.com. I'm David Ravel. Value Side is independently written and researched. The views expressed are strictly my own.